Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Planet Zoo. This is new. This is Arcadia Zoo, my only franchise mode zoo moving forward. We're starting from scratch. I've destroyed the current franchise that I had going. In case you haven't caught the little update video I did last week, basically I'd gotten a little bit tired and kind of lacking inspiration in Planet Zoo, so I thought the only thing that I could really do to bring that back is start over. And here we are. No research unlocked, no conservation points. We are now in a brand new franchise zoo. So as you can see, what I've already done is marked out where the range of power from the entrance ends and built a path going out. And this entrance area is going to begin with like a few habitats, well, a few exhibits, no habitats at all, and our research station. We're going to try and knock out as much research as we can, get a transport ride researched, and then we're going to start working on a transportation route right into the middle of the zoo. And that's where our main exhibits are going to start being formed. So this area will begin as something, and then very much like I did with Saltwell Safari Park, get demolished as we move over to the middle there. And that is going to be a kind of town, I guess. I may put in like a couple of hotels and some shops and a big main street. But this area is eventually going to become a car park of some sorts with like a coach station or something in. And I'm going to then try, because I think you can actually disable the spawn points. I'm just going to mess around with my settings for a second because I do need to change something. I'm going to put a cap on the amount of guests that I can have in this zoo for now. I'm going to leave it at 1,000. Basically, I don't want the zoo to grow too quickly and get to a point where guests are unhappy because we can't cope with the demands that they have. So that's why I'm setting that cap. I can probably cope with about 1,000, but any more it starts to get really quite difficult. But that's what we're going to try and do, is grow as we go. Anyway, I've demolished most of this entrance. Obviously, the stuff that's out of bounds I can't get rid of, but we're going to try and hide this as best we can. And if we can actually disable the guest spawners in this area and buy some new ones once we have enough money, we'll have them spawn somewhere else or spawn off a coach, or I'll build a train or something like that. I don't know. There's a lot we can think about and a lot we can do, and that is very like long-term planning. I expect this series to be a really long-running one, and it's quite nice to just have the focus on it being the only one. And this huge area at the back there is the most annoying thing about it because it breaks the immersion. I want these guests to come from somewhere, and they're not. They're just kind of spawning out of nowhere, which is unfortunate. Anyway, we're going to start with a little bit of light management. So we're going to be constructing some little bits and pieces. You can see here though we have no build materials at all, nothing of use. It's all the very basic bare bones because nothing is unlocked. So that's going to be our first goal, get stuff unlocked. Now I'm going to explain why I'm only doing exhibits to begin with as this video progresses. I'm just moving in these little blocks of 4 exhibits so that we're pretty close up and nicely lined up with a path that works there. And then I'm going to put in some vending machines. So let's go to our guest facilities and drink stalls. We're going to use a Gulpy vending machine to begin with. And then we'll get a Gulpy burger vending machine. And lastly, we're going to put in an information kiosk. I'm going to add it to this group, but then I'll remove it. I just want to make sure that it's built on the grid because we are still going to use them in one, and then I'm going to build an outer shell that kind of sits over them. So we put the toilet block in, and that will then be next door and part of the same building as the information kiosk, if that makes sense. Here we are then. We're speeding things up. What we've got at the moment is 2 lots of 2 exhibits. Just going to open up my overview here. We have our giant forest scorpion. We have a good guest happiness rating, which is going to stand us in good stead. An okay animal rating. Everything else is pretty poor. But we have a salmon pink tarantula in one set of exhibits and the giant forest scorpion in another one. These guys have fairly quick breeding times, and once we get them fully researched, we can start making sure that we're getting gold rated animals coming out of this. And having spiders and scorpions is pretty useful. So we're also going to expand and get another tarantula and the other scorpion, which is the hairy desert scorpion. Just going to slow things down a second so I can go through a few other bits and pieces. Here we have our animals. We've already managed to fill out quite a few of them, and they are producing offspring. We're going to have Liz, our vet, research the Brazilian salmon pink tarantula, get that all the way up to the max tier, and do the same with the giant forest scorpion. Roland is going to start researching some pieces for us here as well, so we're going to have him work on the conservation theme first. Alright, we have a research complete. We've got the giant desert hairy scorpion, our newest addition in that next set of 4 exhibits. And as you can see, we've filled out our other sets of 4, the salmon pink tarantula and the giant forest scorpion. I'm just going to show you how we're getting on with stuff here. We're going to have a little look at what we've got. I'm having a couple of UI glitches at the moment, so that's a little bit annoying. But as you can see, we're getting gold, bronze rated salmon pink tarantulas. I'm going to send them all to the trade center and just do some moving around again. I want to make sure that the highest quality ones are put in breeding pairs in the correct areas, and then the other ones are kind of sold off, and that's how we're making our money at the moment. Now it's going to be slow going and a lot of micromanagement. You can see we're in year 5 at the moment, and that's going to continue. I think probably by the end of this video we'll be in year 10, but we will at least have a steady income coming in as each of these exhibits has offspring and starts a cycle again. We can then continue selling and selling and selling and eventually build up a nice little base of money. And it may well be that we continue expanding the exhibits and get more and more spiders in and stuff, and anything that has kind of like a reproductive cycle that is short. And you only really get that with the exhibit animals, especially ones that you can really quickly sell out to kind of grind up some finances in franchise mode. So we're going to sell all of these. That's 1,275 in the bank. So it's small beans at the moment, but we will continue to grow as those ratings get up and as we unlock more research. And I will need to rename my exhibits at some point, but I'll probably do that off camera, and then you'll see the kind of finished articles on them. But there we go, another pregnant giant forest scorpion. That's going to increase things very well for us. We are now into year 8, and our giant forest scorpions are really starting to improve. They're all bronze now with a couple of golds thrown in there. I'm just selling off a few that I'm not going to need anymore, so we'll quickly trade them out. 670, not a lot, but we have 12 grand in the bank, and we're almost at a point now where we can actually build this into something that looks good. Again, another pregnant giant forest scorpion there as well, so that's going to continue bringing in some money. And as you can see, there's a lot of micromanagement, like I've already said, but we'll be able to manage that easily, and just making sure that we're moving in, you know, like if we have 2 gold rated females in one, but then only a bronze in another, we're moving the gold across and keeping that flow going really well. And once we get the older ones gone, the original crew, it'll be much easier to manage, because we'll just have them kind of constantly reproducing, and then we're constantly replacing the oldest breeding pair with new ones. So our forest scorpions there, you can see, nicely sorted. We just got a couple more that we can shift around into the other exhibit, and I think that should be it. We should have 2 in each one. Yep, there we go. Right, nice. Oh, we've got one more here. We need to move you into number 3. Put you in there. I'm not quite sure what's going on with my UI today, but stuff's just not clicking. Let me just try and come on. One more try, and then I'm going to give up. But you can see they're gradually improving, and it's just about grinding that out in the early days. People are generally happy. We'll get like just under a 3-star rating. Have a look at our hairy scorpions now, the latest edition. And again, going really well. The giant forest, there we go. We've had another birth cycle. See, just as I'm selling them, I'm getting more coming in, which is really good. We're into year 10 now, and we have expanded and added another set of exhibits. This one is the Mexican red knee tarantula, and it was really hard to find some of these on the exhibit marketplace, but we managed to get a couple of breeding pairs in, so we can start going forward with that one. Now, what I'm going to do is start moving all of these exhibits over into the left side, because the right side here is where I'm actually going to have my staff area and the train station itself. And once we've kind of moved everything along, the exhibits will eventually move into the main bulk of the zoo, and this will kind of just be a little bit of fluff, I guess. So we'll make like a little hotel or a guest entrance of some description that looks really nice and really inviting. But obviously the main reason you'd be coming here is to get to the train station, to take the train into the middle of the zoo and see everything from a centralized location. And then I'm going to have like an underground monorail that takes people all the way around on like a loop, and just hope to God that it works properly, because I'm not fully confident that it is going to, but that's just life, I guess. And our Brazilian pink tarantula has had offspring. So you can see the size that we're going for here, and it is going to take me a while to build into this, but I'm really excited for it. All right, we are in year 11. We have 18 grand in the bank, and as you can see, I've moved my exhibits across, and given them a floor and the basis of a foundation. So we can actually start building this into a tangible asset that looks good and inviting and gives this entrance area some sort of purpose. And I might eventually move the entire building, or I might leave the shell of the building and put something new in there, because I've kind of got an idea for what I want to do. It's going to involve me playing around with roof pieces and creating a customized roof and then fitting plaster in to get it all nice and matched up. But I'm hoping it looks good, and I'm really looking forward to actually building it and eventually getting to that middle. I keep looking back at it thinking that, oh, it's going to be not much distance, but then I'm like, oh my god, this is vast and this is a huge project. But I am still very much looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to playing around with my use of space as well. Everything I always build is really tight and compact, and I'm trying to make everything a little bit more vast. Even this building could do with being a bit bigger, but I'm working with minimal budget, and I just want to make sure that I actually build something decent. So that's why we're doing this one a little bit small, and you can see crowds are already starting to form and get kind of stuck in each other. But we're going to speed things up, and then I'm going to dive right into a speed build and talk a little bit more about the build that I'm going to create here and how things are going to develop moving forward. We've also just completed some vet research, which means we've fully researched everything else, so we're just doing the diseases now, which is great. Okay, so this speed build, I want to make something that's modern, has like a nice curved roof with like a color gradient going on it. It's probably going to end up looking something that resembles more of an aquatic facility, but I'm quite happy with how I've wanted to plan this, and I'm looking forward to building it. So again, we're going to start with my usual go-tos, which are these girders, because I think they're some of the nicest pieces in the game. They give you a lot of variation and you can do quite a lot with them. They also contrast really well with everything else in the game, so you can use them for just about everything. I want to use them to create the foundations of this building and do everything in my usual slapdash haphazard way to try and match it up. Thankfully, I'm building on the grid, so I'm not really having any of these issues that I've had in the past. And one of the things that I learned from the previous builds was to just make sure that you're always building on that grid. And then once you finish your building, then you move it into position and work everything else out. And that's something that I think is important, that I've taken away from my first 2 playthroughs of Planet Zoo. So now that our foundation pieces are in place, I'm going to put some windows in here. And I've already realized that I've done things a little bit wrong, so I actually need to remove most of these pieces and then just replace them with this one wall that I've built like I did when I was making the log cabins in Northlands. So it's not too much of an issue, and at least it's something that we've caught now. Another thing I'm actually going to start doing is using building my roofs as a separate piece to the rest of a building, because again, that makes life easier. You can move the roof out whenever you want and just like lift it up to then create any extra additional foundation pieces that you might have missed out. Putting in some conservation boards here so that we can increase our education rating as guests walk through, but I want to make sure that they're neat and well placed, and just that we're not going to have guests bumping into them or walking through them. And now we're going to work on the roof. Now this is probably the most elaborate piece of the build. I'm using plaster here to create a curved shape that I'm then going to make into a bit of a color gradient. We're going to go from dark blue all the way to like a pale blue, and I just want to curve this roof all the way around and make it look a little bit wavy. So this kind of came from, there's actually, again, another reason it's definitely going to be more suited to kind of an aquatic thing is because it looks like waves, but there's actually a swimming pool near where I used to live that has a roof that's really quite similar to this, and I thought, oh god, wouldn't it be nice to make something like that in Planet Zoo? Because I think a lot of the roofs in Planet Zoo are kind of where buildings can come away and get a little bit let down, because there's not a great deal of creativity available to us for that unless you make something truly customized like this. And this is like the first attempt I've had at this sort of thing. I mean, obviously I've done custom roofs before, but they've always kind of been just texture replacements, like using pieces of wood to create a triangulated roof instead. But I've always had those rooftop foundations there that I've used as a guide. So this is my first like unguided, let's make a curved roof, finish something off. And I actually did have a lot of fun making it. I wish I hadn't used plaster though. That's the one regret I do have, because the texture doesn't look amazing. And the finished article, you can kind of see the texture of the plaster still. So maybe off camera, I'll come back and sort this out. So we're just about at the end here. And then as if by magic, there we go. We have our roof. We've put in our color gradient. Again, this was something that I was playing around with and I wasn't too happy with. Well, I'm happy with it. I'm happy enough. I just think the gradient could have been a little bit more better defined. And again, I think that's part of the way the color sits on the texture itself. So you don't actually notice it a lot, but sometimes it does just kind of pop out and you can really see, especially when you're looking at it from quite a far distance. Now, I'm going to just highlight everything here because I want to separate this and have it as a separate piece, because I'm then going to attach a roof to it underneath as like a supporting structure. And I want to do that and have the freedom of movement to be able to shift things around. And then we're coming in here and just working on some trims. So I want to make a customized like path trim out of the aquatic faux rocks. Again, we're using a lot of aquatic based stuff, even though this isn't an aquatic habitat build. And then we're just going to trim this all the way along and make sure that we've got enough of a gap for the staff to access the staff room. Just remove any excess there and reposition a few different bits and pieces. Just some light rotations so that it doesn't all look like one thing. Remove those trees. And here we go. We've got a nice building with some text on it. Arcadia welcomes you. And I've also filled in the gaps where the roof doesn't quite match up with the rest of the building, which I think looks really good. And again, I just use plaster for that, the little plaster panels, because they're really quite easy to manipulate and you can sink them into stuff without them poking through pretty easily. I'm going to run this trim all the way around the curved cobblestone path, and then we will finish off by putting in a few items of foliage. I'll show you me doing the first one, and then next episode you'll see the finished article. We are going to do a little couple of like tour-based things right at the end here. As there's not a lot to show you, there's not going to be much of a tour, and you've seen most of it anyway. So we are finishing off this trim, going all the way around here. Took a little bit of a leap of faith with this huge duplication, but it worked out okay, and it was just a case of removing any excess, making sure that I wasn't removing too much. And the build's taking shape, actually. I'm quite surprised, you know, with how little we had to work with at the beginning to have got to this stage. I did try again, being a little bit ballsy here, but obviously because that's a different angle, that was never going to work. Then we'll start decorating with foliage. We're going to use these beech trees because they're like part of the entrance theme. I'm going to dot a few of those around and then play around with some rock work, just some nice little stacks. Nice and easy, just light bits of rock work going in here, a couple of individual stones sticking up through the ground. We'll do some terrain painting and then we'll start putting in some greenery and some little pops of colour with some nice flowers. Just sorting out the terrain here. I want to remove all of the large patches of long grass first, and then I'll start painting them back in. I'm going to make a little pond here, so just making sure that got a nice little basis for something to work with. I don't want the gradient, the incline to be too steep going into it, but I want to make sure that I can get a nice amount of water covering it. Then we'll put in some pops of long grass, just sticking in between the rocks. So I do really like using this terrain paint, but I do think if you go over the top with the long grass, it can be a bit of a nightmare. Like you can see here, it just looks too much, basically. And it kind of overcrowds everything. Of course, arrow wood is one of my favourite things to use around the base of trees, and when you put in these little rock clusters, because it's mainly because of the three-dimensional nature of it. The leaves poke through in all the right places, and at the same time they kind of sink down and give you that really nice like overgrown, as if that bush has grown through lots of little cracks in the rock work, which is really nice. I love the effect that creates, and it's one of my favourite tools to use. I'd thought about building a proper functioning fountain here, but nothing was really jumping out, and everything was a little bit too big from the classical pack, and quite frankly, I couldn't be bothered to look for anything else and be inventive on this one. I just wanted something simple. This little fountain didn't really work, so I then decided to replace it with a rock. Nothing too big though, just a little one that we could then just balance an elephant statue on the top and have that squirting water into the pond itself. I'd thought about putting a willow tree in there, but they were far too big, and we've got quite a small space to work with, so we just threw down some lily pads and left this as a really nice, simple, kind of natural structure. Once we'd had that elephant statue placed in, just the little baby one, the classical like decorative elephant statue, and then we put in a very small out. Just getting it all lined up nicely, and then we can adjust the location of the rock so that it's shooting right into the middle of the pond there. Throw down a water splash, and again line this up, getting a nice angle on that. And we'll adjust the colours on the water a little bit to get something nice, nothing too garish. That one's a nice little natural looking, beautiful watercolour. And here we are looking at Arcadia and how it looks so far. This one came together really nicely. I really like the shape of that roof, and it's something that I'm very proud of. As you can see, we filled that in with plaster as well, so that it looks like one nice natural piece, rather than it just being open to the elements and having a couple of supporting beams in there. There are actually some supporting beams in the structure, but now that I've covered it all up with the plaster, we're going to have a little look through here. You've got this really nice open space. It's a little bit bare bones. Could do with a couple of like wall decorations and stuff put up there, or maybe some posters and things. That's something that I may end up looking at. I also want to maybe integrate some community creations into this by downloading some stuff from the Steam Workshop and putting those into it, rather than me just designing everything from scratch. I think that would be a really nice thing to do. I'm going to sweep through here again and just show you the back of it. Lots of stuff going on here, lots of guests coming in, all those exhibits working really well, and I've actually made some like, not customized, but some little ventilation areas as well, kind of like, they look a little bit like what the actual exhibit like building pieces look like, but I've pulled them out into the main kind of structure. And this is what we're left with to end the episode. I'm really happy with how this start has gone. We're going to do a lot more work. I'm going to do a little bit off camera, so next episode you'll kind of see a little bit of a different look to this. I may redecorate the exhibit house to begin with, and then we'll move on and hopefully have our train station researched by then. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this first episode in our new franchise mode series. Make sure you drop me a comment if you did enjoy it, like this video, and if you are here for the first time, I hope I've done enough to earn your subscription. It would be great to have you along for the ride. Thanks for watching, everyone. Goodbye.